Welcome to the 1958 Lawyer, the show for attorneys who know the old model isn't working anymore. The billable hour, the 12-hour day, the expensive office no one visits. Your hosts, Ron and Rebecca Boxstaller, are here to question all of that and more by exploring smarter, healthier, more flexible ways to run a law firm. No more burnout, no more outdated expectations, just real conversations with attorneys who are proving there's a better way. If you're ready to build a law firm that's profitable and livable, you're in the right place. Now here are your hosts, Ron and Rebecca.
Welcome to the 1958 Lawyer, the podcast about the business of law. I'm your host, Ron Boxstaller, joined by my co-host, Rebecca. Here's a number that should get every solo and small firm attorney attention. According to the Legal Trends Report, the average attorney converts fewer than half of their prospective client consultations into actual matters. That means every other conversation walks out the door. Today's guest decided to do something about that, and the results speak for themselves. Marian Kelly is a plaintiff personal injury attorney and managing partner with Popjoy and Kelly, LLC in Voorhees, New Jersey. She's been practicing since 1992, has 3 published appellate decisions, and has built a firm that runs entirely on referrals, no advertising. And last fall, she went through the Pollen Performance 12-week Rainmaker program alongside her business coach, Chuck Pollen. And she's here today to tell us what actually changed. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Ron and Rebecca, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, welcome. We're happy to have you. Before we get to the first question, I want to kind of set the table for our listeners a little bit. Marian is the rare attorney who wears 2 hats simultaneously. She's actively working on her own caseload for PI, but she's also running the business side of her firm as the managing partner. And that dual role is exactly where this conversation is going to live. With that, Marian, let's start with your story.
So I have been a personal injury attorney for about 33 years. I've always been representing the plaintiffs. I started practicing in a 20 attorney firm for about 18 years or so. And then I did move to a larger firm where there was 200 practicing attorneys. And about 15 years ago, I started my own practice with my partner, Bill Popjoy. And it's just he and I and our assistant who run our personal injury practice. And my business partner, Bill, he also does criminal law and municipal court, which is the traffic tickets in New Jersey. But between the two of us, we run the whole practice. And as you said, I'm also the managing attorney doing the daily, business, paying the bills, getting all the checks out, just anything at all, from the phone bill to the copier bill. I do it all.
It sounds like a lot on your plate.
Right.
Practice since 92. You've built the firm that runs entirely on referrals. I know you're a Provisors member, so networking, you're out there talking in the community quite often. Yeah. Now you're the managing partner on top of running the full PI caseload. Can you walk our listeners through what it's like on a day-to-day basis?
So really the key, and I think one of the things the Pollen Performance program taught me and reinforced, is that you have to have a plan. So most mornings, I would say 3 or 4 mornings a week, I do a networking meeting from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. They are mostly Zoom meetings through my networking group Provisors, but sometimes they're if they're local people, and these are attorneys and business people throughout the country. And so I do spend, I would say, at least 2 hours a day prospecting, meeting new people, whether that's in a formal meeting with like Provisors, or if I'm simply, doing a one-on-one Zoom call. Mostly everything's done by Zoom these days, which is so convenient. And I'm trying to meet other attorneys who do not do personal injury, as well as local business people who, whenever their loved ones, family or friends happen to be in some sort of accident, car accident, slip and fall, dog bite, hopefully I'm the first person who comes to mind, because I am competing with all the attorneys who are on the billboards around the country, as well as on television. So that's really my competition. And I am marketing myself individually to people on an in-person basis, whether it's literally in person or on Zoom.
That's interesting.
I love that you're setting aside 2 hours a day.
And that's one of the things that the Pollen Performance program really taught me. I'll be honest, before that program, I was not necessarily doing that. But when you do the program, they have a plan set out for you. First is the organization, but secondly, it is figuring out who your referral sources are and actually putting yourself out there and meeting with them, whether it's these one-on-one Zoom meetings, but even going through your contacts, your LinkedIn contacts, your old clients or old, associates that you've met throughout your business, whether you're an attorney or not, and just reaching out to them and reminding them that you're here and connecting with them. You're not selling them, you're simply reconnecting with them, asking them how they're doing, and also learning what's new in their life and building upon that in that relationship.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you said that before you went through the program, you didn't necessarily allocate that kind of time. And there's something that I think sort of ties to that is interesting to me and probably to some of our listeners, is that before you went to law school, you were a communications major. And so you don't have the formal business training, and yet here you are running your law firm. So at what point before you took this program did you decide that focusing on the business side of your firm was something that you needed to spend some time on?
Well, I really realized in a post-COVID world, when the world shut down, personal injury cases went away because, at least in the Northeast, people were not going to work. People were not shopping. Everyone was shut down. So that created, a problem for personal injury attorneys because there was no work to be had. We were all, still settling cases we already had in our pipeline, but coming across new business was difficult for a couple of years. And so with that reality of what happened to all of us, during that time period, it really forced my partner and I to focus on, well, how are we going to market ourselves now that we really need more business than we've ever had before to kind of make up for that loss? And that's when we started looking into what should we be doing differently. And that, led us to the Poland program eventually through networking. That's how I ended up meeting Evan and his father, Chuck. And so they provided this opportunity for us to learn from them. And as you said, I am not a business major. Nobody ever told me how to run a small business at all. I had just been doing the best I could, trying to keep up as best I could. And so this was really the first formal training that I did have. And I really, really gained a lot of insight and knowledge. Some things I kind of was stumbling along and was doing right, but most of it really needed refinement and tailoring. And that's really what the Poland program provided for me.
One thing because I went to the class also, and one thing that stuck with me is I've done this a lot where I just show up and throw up. I think Chuck actually hits on that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many attorneys, I always say, especially in the networking groups, when I talk to attorneys and they give me their list of 12 things they do, like here's the 12 areas of practice. Did the program change your approach to how you present yourself? I know they call it an elevator pitch, but even besides the elevator pitch, just how you talk about what you do.
It definitely did. And that's really one of the great things about the program. So not only are they teaching you a plan of action, so to speak, but as you know, it's interactive. They tell you, they instruct you on what, the principles of sales and things like that. But then they actually permit you to put it into action in amongst a great group of people where you get their feedback. And the elevator pitch is something that they specifically work on and that you practice. And it totally changed how I present myself to people, because as I said earlier, I'm competing with the people on the billboards and on the television ads that most people are actually offended by. And so it forced me to take a look at what I do differently in my small practice. And what makes me an asset to people is that, they can work one-on-one with me. For example, for me, my clients actually have my cell phone number. And while I have a wonderful assistant that I work with, I'm the one that 99% of the time they're interacting with. And you don't get that with a larger practice. And so it made me realize that things like that I was already doing really should be the focal point of my marketing efforts.
Before we kind of jump into too many things, I want you to give us a chance. Like, do you have a specialty that you're looking for?
In terms of the type of cases that I work,
Yes.
really for me, I travel the state of New Jersey. I don't practice in any other state, only New Jersey. And I do the car accident cases, the slip and falls, the dog bites, wrongful death cases, injuries on the job, anything where someone is injured. And how they tend to come to us in the first instance isn't necessarily because they're injured, but it's because they have an unpaid medical bill from an emergency room that they think somebody else should be responsible for. And how is that going to get paid? And that tends to be often why people reach out to us. It's not really necessarily because they're interested in suing anybody. It's because they don't know what to do with that medical bill. And they actually do feel like, well, it wasn't my fault. Why should I pay for it? And so that's also something that we've incorporated into our elevator pitch and how we can explain to people what we can do for them.
Right. They were seeking help.
Exactly.
They needed help. So did you find that when Evan spoke about moving to, I guess what I just think of being more of a consultative sort of a position, was that a very natural movement for you? Were you already doing that, or did that take a little bit of a shift for you?
Well, I think one of the things that they really focus on teaching you is how to be a trusted advisor, that you can educate people, that you can support them in a difficult time in their life. Obviously, they, like I said, come with unpaid medical bills, but they do have physical pain, emotional pain. It is a hard time, and you're walking them through that process. And so again, it's something that I almost just took for granted that I did for people without necessarily asserting the value that that can provide to people and potential clients. And so even when I'm discussing, even other attorneys don't necessarily understand what my day-to-day looks like if they're a corporate attorney or a tax attorney or something like that, where they're not necessarily dealing with people on a day-to-day basis like I am. And so it's really helped me highlight those things that I am doing. And that is definitely part of what I worked on with the elevator pitch and part of what Evan's program reinforces in terms of being that trusted advisor to people.
Right. So 12 weeks is a long commitment. So was there a moment where like something just clicked and you thought, I've never thought of it that way before. I've been doing this wrong.
So some of it is like, oh, great. I'm happy to hear that because that is what I'm doing. But, the majority of it, because like I said, I'm not business trained, was eye-opening. And definitely, Evan and his dad, Chuck, bring so many years of experience, and they're giving you scenarios that you find yourself in and how to walk people through a process. You obviously want them to hire you, but you don't want to be the pushy person. You want them to respect you and realize that you practice with integrity. And so they do walk you through how to be that person to your client. And it is a long commitment. I would say that the nice thing about their program is, of course, you can attend it live where you're interacting with them as they're teaching you. But if you do have a meeting or something like that, you can certainly, get it as a playback as well on your own time. But I personally, I think there was only one time where I had a court appearance where I couldn't attend it as it was being presented live. And for me, the live aspect, the interaction was really where the value was for the program, because like I said, you're getting the tips and tricks, but you're being able to put them into action with people that are going to say, that's not really the best way to do it. How about you try this? And they give you concrete examples and opportunities to do that.
I give you a lot of credit because that role-playing aspect can scare a lot of people away very quickly. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ron, but that's the first thing I just thought of and all of that.
And over my 30 years of working with law firms, I've thought about where your clients come from as far as, and no one's ever said this to me, that they don't actually initially intend to sue, but yet they got a medical bill and then they're coming to you like, gosh, here, I got this bill. What can I do? Was that happening already? It was already happening. And that's kind of like your whole practice prior to?
Yes, that was already happening. That's generally, I would say, my clients come to me either from other attorneys who don't practice in the same area, and also, clients who send their friends and family. We also find that now they're finding us on Facebook, referral, Facebook chats, our names being, offered around, which we really appreciate. But it's definitely word of mouth. But it's usually like, that's the thing. Like they were just rear-ended. their car needs to be repaired, or it's a total loss. So of course, again, at first, it's not the idea that they're injured and they want to sue because they're injured. It's that they have the unpaid medical bill and they don't have use of their vehicle. So it's either being fixed and they need a rental so they can get back to work and pay their bills. So it's really not the idea that people want to sue because they're injured. It's because they've had a financial consequence that they immediately need someone to answer, like, how is this going to be fixed for me? And how soon can it be fixed? Because I need to get back on my feet. And so when you work with people in that context, it really has you approaching personal injury in a different manner.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it has me actually just sitting here thinking about how different that really is. And that's actually a really good thing. And I'm sure, like, of all of our clients, that many of them do that, but that's never been communicated. Like, we've never really thought about it that way. So that's a great perspective.
And the program had me reflect on that is actually what is happening, and how can I explain to other attorneys or other business people that I'm networking exactly what it is that I do and when to refer someone with me. And, to make sure to go through my contacts, go through my LinkedIn, and, reach out to people and connect over coffee, connect on things we have in common. Don't do the hard sell to people. That's not what you're
Right.
trying to do. You're trying to build the long-term relationship. And like I said, I can't say it enough times, be that trusted advisor.
It's interesting. So one thing that got me, so we get most of our business in my company from referrals of other attorneys, but I've never asked for like a referral, like my Google business page, and that was one thing that Evan's like, you need to ask for those. In fact, he actually did it for us, which I was happy to give him. I was excited because I thought it was a great class, but that got me thinking that why don't I ever do that?
Well,
And
that is one of the things that I definitely was not doing. I was not asking for referrals. For example, they even said to me, like, who is in, like, as the managing attorney, who are you interacting with? You're interacting with your CPA. You're interacting with your banker. You're interacting with, the person who, you get your internet provider from, your IT person. Ask these people to refer to you, because you're doing business with them already. So you can tell everybody what a great person they are at their job, but say to them, please think of me when you know somebody that is in an accident. And I actually did that with my banker, with my CPA, et cetera. And it feels strange to have to ask. You're sometimes embarrassed to ask, but they also teach you how to ask it in a non-offensive way, if you will.
yeah, the natural, and there is a natural way to do it.
Correct.
And so it makes sense. It's interesting. We're in the same boat. We weren't asking for those things, and that makes a lot of
We're
sense.
not. I definitely
Um,
not.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I guess you want to just think that when people see value in your work, that will just come automatically. And trying to reconcile not being pushy with asking for business can be tricky.
And it's funny because my CPA and my banker actually both became clients of mine, because they were both, one was in a car accident and one was in a slip and fall accident. And they came to me, which I greatly appreciated. But now I had to say, okay, can you please, think of me and send other people too? And so having to ask that specifically, was hard.
let's see. The solo attorney or small firm partner who knows they need to get better at business development but doesn't know where to start. What's the first thing you tell them to do?
Well, they need to get with the program and go to the Poland performance program. I really think, I think most attorneys are not business trained. And also, the Poland performance program, works for any person who's in a business, not just attorneys. There happens to be a lot of attorneys who do attend it. And that's a lot of the clients that they work with, even in their one-on-one coaching sessions. And that's the nice thing too, that although there's a 12-week program involved, you still do have access to Evan and his father, Chuck. If you have any questions about anything at all that they are teaching you that you're not sure about. I remember, I think I can't tell you how many elevator pitches I sent to them for them to take their red pen to. I mean, I think I must have sent, I don't know, 5 to 10 of them. And honestly, they were not impressed with my first few. And then we kept refining it and refining it and refining it. So they will spend time with you beyond the program itself to help you, kind of gain the success that you want to get out of the program, but also, feel good about what you're presenting and how you're interacting with potential clients and potential referral sources. Because it's all about figuring out who's a good referral source for you, and then, chasing after it, so to speak, but in a professional manner. That isn't like a hard sell, where you're not being offensive to anyone while you're politely trying to, ask for business. But it's really more about the relationship that you build to gain their trust and their respect. And it's also mutual. There's certain good partners that you can work with. And then there's other people that might not be the best suited partner for you. And they do try to how to figure out which is which, who's worth pursuing, so to speak, in a positive way, and then who you might not be the best fit with, and that's okay too.
Right. That is something to learn. Now, were you able to take some of the information that you learned and sort of filter that to your partner? So my he's partner, able to use it as well, or is he going through the class as well now?
He did it at the same time as I did.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's brilliant.
We both signed up at the same time, and then we would kind of compare notes and, talk about the lesson of the day, so to speak. So I think it was definitely important for the two of us to do it together, to get a full understanding. And I think it's like anything, I might have taken a specific example or a specific lesson, to heart, versus he might have already had that skill, accomplished for himself. And so we do have different strengths and weaknesses, of course, and we did take different things from the program, but we always ended up sharing with each other and talking about it, to better our firm, because that we are doing together.
That's awesome. Now, did I read that you're also like using Chuck as a coach?
Yes, I do. So my partner, Bill, and I both use Chuck as a coach. We've been working with him for a little over a year. We had started working with him before we did the Poland's Performance Program. And of course, it was suggested that we do so because the coaching is great, but this specific sales training, there's just not enough time to do that in the basic coaching sessions that you have with either Evan or Chuck. And so that was really an opportunity to gain a lot of literal sales training that neither of us had had before. I mean, my business partner was a chemistry major before he went to law school. So, like me, no idea, how to run the business part of being a lawyer.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So if you could give your younger self, fresh out of law school, a piece of advice about building a practice from scratch, what would it be? What would you tell yourself?
Well, I will say that for me personally, I still think it would be advantageous for a young attorney to work in a law firm. Now, that could be a small law firm or a bigger law firm, but I feel like for the people who open a practice right out of law school, I give them a ton of credit because I'm still not convinced that's the best practice, because lawyers essentially are trained by other lawyers. You have mentors. You learn by working in law firms, seeing how other practitioners practice. So I think that's like a fundamental basis that you probably still should have. But definitely understanding that the legal practice is a business and that you do have to network and market yourself. So if I had to go back in time, though, I would have started networking as soon as I was out of law school and, learned that from some mentors that I had versus, just being the associate in a law firm that is handed the brief to write and you're focused on your one task and you're not really involved in the business of the practice. So if I could go back and learn the business of the practice much earlier, I think that would have been phenomenal for me to have done. And when I see young attorneys out now doing that, I give them such credit. And it was really nice in at least the Poland program that I sat in on, there were a lot of younger attorneys and business people who were learning that right out of law school. And that would be a huge benefit, I think.
It kind of makes me think, kind of off subject. are we changing? Because if you go back 20 years ago, you got a law firm, most of your work is coming, almost all your work is coming from referrals. No advertising, no marketing. In fact, I don't think it was even legal at that point. So you didn't see 500 billboards, attorney billboards, which is kind of what lines our streets today. Fast forward to today, how much has that changed? So how much would you say attorneys are getting their work from, I used to tell everyone it's about 80% was getting your attorney's work is coming from other attorneys. I think that
Yes.
number's changing. How do you see that?
I think so too. I mean, I definitely think it's changing because of the advertising and, the advertising, at least, I'm in the Philadelphia area, so to speak. I mean, it's everywhere. You can't escape it. And we do feel the impact as a smaller law firm. We feel the impact of the, firms that constantly advertise and on TV, on the radio, on the billboards that you cannot escape. Whenever you land in any city and you're leaving the airport, that's what you see first. So it's definitely something that I think has really changed and really requires us to, if we're not doing that, which most of us probably cannot afford, you have to get out there and market yourself. And so the networking is more important than ever to be able to maintain your referrals, and especially amongst other attorneys, because now the public can just look at the billboard. They're not necessarily going to call an attorney that they know and ask. They're just going to call that billboard or, listen to that television ad, which they didn't have as many options like that in the past. So they would call the person who wrote their will and ask them, who can I talk to about my car accident? But now they don't even have to reach out to us, and then they can just Google as well, right? And if they Google, there's a million people out there. Mm-hmm. So it's really getting your name out there so that when something happens, you are top of mind, not just to the local attorneys, but also to the local business community.
Bring it back to your point earlier that a lot of clients don't like those attorneys that are on the billboard. Many of them actually don't practice law. Correct. They're more of a marketing firm, and they bring in and outsource a good portion of the cases they bring in.
Absolutely.
And I think I only know of one national firm that I don't think outsources their work, but I think almost all the others are sending most of that work away.
Yes, there's the ones that I'm thinking of in the Philadelphia area mostly are the marketing machines, and they send it out to like local people. There's no actual firm. And that's definitely changed, I think, the way, and people say, who's calling those firms. But I did work for a firm that was on the billboards locally, several, like maybe 15 years ago for a short period of time. And what was so interesting to me about that was the billboard only had like 1-800-INJURED or something, whatever their thing was. Did not have the name of the law firm on it. And that was because the law firm had personal injury practice and a business practice. And the business practitioners did not want to be associated with the personal injury people on the billboard. So their name was not on the billboard. And I can't tell you, we would sit in at lunch every day if you were a smart associate. So you could catch the calls of the new clients coming in and calling. And they were all calling that number on that billboard without knowing which law firm they were calling. So it does work. I mean, people are calling them, of course.
It's crazy, but not the way I think it should be. So
correct.
I'm glad that you're out there and you're taking care of to your clients. So, well, I'll leave you. Any last words? Anything you want to?
I really can't stress enough what a wonderful opportunity is for attorneys to learn those sales skills in that performance program. It's not normally something that most attorneys I know were not business majors. And this is in a 12-week, accelerated course. You're able to get all that information from professionals that have worked with attorneys for decades. And so that's a no miss opportunity for me.
Awesome. Well, Marian, it's been, you're exactly the kind of conversation that listeners we want to talk to. We want people to understand, we want attorneys to understand that this is something you really need to do. I think having a coach I think it's great.
Yes.
It's like you go through school and you have someone helping you all the way along. And all of a sudden you get into what I call the real world, is what I tell all of our kids. And then you don't have one. It's kind of crazy. You need someone to help you keep going. So I think what you're doing is just proof of that. So
absolutely. It's been really invaluable to have the coaching. which, like I said, we've only really been doing for a little over a year now. So, I've been practicing for 33 years. My partner is about 35 years or so. So, you can teach an old dog new tricks, as they say. And we have really, really enjoyed doing that.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I know it's short notice. Thanks for talking highly about Evan and Chuck. They appreciate it, but honestly, they're just great. And I think more people need to just reach out and talk to them, work with them. So, if you can find Marian at Popjoy Kelly, POPJOYKELLY.com, and connect with her on LinkedIn. We'll have the links in the show notes. And if you want to explore Rainmaker program that she went through and I went through, we're going to have the links also for that in the show notes. Amada clients, if you're listening, you do get 25% discount on the program. So we'll have that up there for you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with a colleague who could use it. Marian, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And we hope we'll see you again soon.
It was my pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the 1958 Lawyer. If you like the show, tell a friend. And please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to hear more about Ron, Rebecca, or Amada, go to amataoffices.com. That's amataoffices.com. All the links are also in the show notes.